Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to go over my top 5 tips for the overpowered, super strong, brand new Reworked Viktor. Now, my goal behind this video is to give you a better understanding of the champion as well as to make you a better League player as a whole. I put timestamps at every single point of my video that are going to be up at the top if you want to skip this intro or a particular tip. And if you want to contact me directly with any questions, or if you come up with a cool new build that I don't talk about in the video, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm going to put a link to my Discord and a link to my stream down below. Now, I am a bit limited with this format, only going over 5 tips because I don't like my videos going too long. I would love to hear your tips as well down below, as it is a new season. Everyone is starting to learn. I'm recording this video on November 13th if you want any reference for that. And with all that out of the way, let's jump into tip number 1. Alright, and jumping into tip number 1 for the new Viktor, we are going to talk about build diversity, because this is where he really shines with this new rework. He's no longer forced into spending thousands of gold on his hex tech upgrades, and he can really pick what items he wants for different game situations. Now, this is just my ideal setup for runes. I think phase rush is really strong. You can also go with things like electrocute if you're looking for a little bit of burst, or airy if you think you can consistently harass out a melee enemy laner with a airy. It can be good, but I think overall phase rush is the best setup. Now, when you are looking at the mythic items, I think there are 2 items that it really comes down to, and that is the Liandry's Anguish and the Luden's Tempest. Now, these are going to be both extremely viable picks. Liandry's Anguish is going to be particularly effective against a lot of enemy bruisers and tanks, where Luden's Tempest is going to be a bit stronger if you are fighting against a bunch of assassins or a bunch of very squishy targets, because it allows you to burst out the enemies quite easily. So always keep this in mind in making sure that you are looking at the enemy team comp before picking up the particular mythic that you are looking for. Now, there is a very good selection of items that you can look to pick up with Viktor, but your core should always be a mythic item and your Lichbane. With how it looks to empower the overall damage you're going to be throwing out with your Q is really where it shines. It gives you a huge proc of movement speed and a large amount of ability power. Now, the rest should be pretty self-explanatory. If you want a little bit more peel chase down, Rhythise is effective. Rabadon's when you are in the late game. Demonic Embrace if you want a little bit of tankiness. Cosmic Drive if you want to be constantly just kiting out the enemies, and then Zhonya's against a assassin heavy team, Void Staff against tank heavy teams, and Banshee's Veil against pick heavy teams. If you have any questions about the items or runes, let me know down below. And that will wrap up tip number 1. Alright, and getting into tip number 2 with Viktor, he is extremely heavily reliant on his ability to get as much farm as possible. If you funnel in a bit of CS into him, he is going to really just turn into a monster with getting a lot of damage and upgrades quickly. If you don't know the course evolution in the changes, he needs 100 hex fragments before he can upgrade a ability. He gets 1 from kills of a minion or monster, 5 from large minions, and 25 on champion takedowns. Now, this is doing a couple of different things. It's putting even more weight on getting CS, so you want to prioritize the starter items that give you a little bit of extra damage on minions. That can be the differential between just hitting that last enemy minion and just missing out completely on the CS, or getting a very high CS count. So you want to look for things like the Doran's Ring. I wouldn't really recommend going to Tear of the Goddess build, but I think the Doran's Ring is extremely effective even in low pressure lanes, and this year extremely good with the overall Viktor's auto attack animation. I would recommend going the Doran's Ring. Now, with Viktor's new changes and getting 25 fragments from the kills, you really want to look to skirmish in the early game, and you want to get lane priority as soon as possible. You want to try and push in the lane as quickly as possible so you can look to roam and join your jungler for those early skirmishes. Particularly if you are in low elo, you are able to really find a lot of skirmishes, and this will build up quite quickly. You can get 1 or 2 evolutions before like the 15-minute mark, which was really unheard of with the old hex tech setup. Now, another thing with playing Viktor and the new importance on the overall CS, and you need to have his overall auto attack animation just down to a T, and exactly how quick the missile speed is and how much damage he is going to be doing this. I heavily encourage you to lock your level at level 1 and do a bunch of practice CSing and really get his auto attack animation down. And that will wrap up tip number 2 for Viktor. Alright, and getting into tip number 3 with Viktor, a extremely important thing that you need to understand when playing Viktor is your overall ability to control a particular zone. This is going to be extremely prevalent around objectives where there are a lot of very big choke points where you can look to hit a large amount of targets with your really insane amount of AoE damage that comes out of your E and your R. You always want to look for these choke point plays. How you can look to set them up is by pretty much just sitting at kind of your max range. You want to be looking for a W where you can catch someone and just really pop a lot of damage out on enemies in this particular scenario. With your ability to control the distance and hit multiple people with your E and your R, it is really going to set up your team for success in team fighting. So always look to pop a lot of your abilities and damage when they are starting to group up in choke points. The last thing you want to do is have maybe something like a Maokai dives in on your front line and you use your E and your Q on it and you aren't really getting the full effect. Wait for the enemy team to commit and hit multiple targets. You really want to look at your E and your R as a resource, and you want to get the most out of your resources. You want to sell it for the most amount of money, and how you do that is by waiting for a time that you can hit as many targets as possible in these particular choke points. If you have any questions about team fighting, hit me up. If you are looking for particular comps that are good with Viktor, he really excels in front to back team fighting, so it is a good time to pick Viktor. If you have something like a solid front line of a Maokai, maybe out of the top lane, a Zac in the jungle, maybe a Leona in support, and it's you and a hyper carry ADC kind of backing up with a lot of damage, there's really just a situation where Viktor is going to succeed, as well as games with minimal amounts of assassins and divers. With the insane amount of damage currently in the game, assassins can really punish Viktor if he is caught out of position. And that will wrap up this tip. Alright, and getting into tip number 4, we're going to go over a couple of really small micro things. This is going to be particularly important for people that are just looking to start pick up Viktor as a champion. Now, the first thing, it's a little bit basic, but you're not going to know about it if you're just picking up Viktor, and that is its targeting system. As you can see, when I press R, there is a little icon around it, and when you tap R over a different champion, it is going to move your Chaos Storm to that side. At any point that is up, you can always reactivate it, and then you can also click on terrain. But if they have that icon over it, it will follow that champion to wherever he moves. Now, a little basic trading pattern that I found was extremely effective against particularly people that are very cocky in the mid lane that always look to punish you is you want to do just a basic, maybe an auto Q, they chase back, and then you throw out your E. You want to throw out your E when they are in a predictable play pattern. This is when the enemy is chasing you down or when they are CSing. So always look for that death rate and punishing people walking in very predictable patterns. So say you're playing against a Katarina or maybe an Akali or Fizz that is looking to constantly punish you, and he thinks he is better than you and is constantly looking to take trades. Just doing a really long range auto Q and then doing that E when you know he is looking to chase after you can be an extremely effective way to play them out. Now, the next thing that I want you guys to understand is with the gravity field, you do not always have to rely on getting that stuns. What it can do is really increase your ability to hit your E and your R. If you're just throwing it down, even if you think that they aren't going to stay in it, maybe they have a dash, you just want to slow that down for a small amount of time. You want to throw out your E and your R during this period because you are more likely to hit the second part of your E as well as get more ticks off of your R. So always look to augment your burst with your overall slow that is provided out of your W. And then obviously if you get things like Rylai's just applying the Rylai's with your Q ability and then throwing out your more damaging abilities with the Death Ray and Chaos Storm can be a great way to play it out. Now, next up, when you are playing Viktor, you are able to clear waves quite quickly, and you are able to just throw out a Chaos Storm to get a lot of pressure in the lane, get a lot of push, and to do a good amount of damage. It doesn't always have to be a kill ability. It isn't the shortest cooldown, but it can be a great way to kind of bandage how Viktor is a little bit weaker in the game. Now, general rule of thumb, when using your gravity field, it usually is best to wait for the enemies to use their dash, wait for them to commit, and then throw out your gravity field. The last thing you want to do is say this is a Z and you just throw a W on top of them and they just W dash in. Now, if you're not looking to throw out your burst on that exact same kind of point, maybe they have their W down, that could be a good time to do it, but always make sure that you're throwing out your W at the most opportune moment. And that will wrap up this tip for Viktor. All right, and jumping into the final tip with Viktor, we're going to go over a couple of small things that are going to be a bit difficult to start picking up if you are just learning how to play Viktor, and that is the unique skill shot that is Viktor's Death Ray. The only thing that might help you out a little bit is if you've played quite a bit of Rumble. It is the exact same type of skill shot where you don't really want to quick cast it. You want to just do a kind of click and drag. I think this is the most accurate way to play out Viktor's E on just a normal cast. Now, you always want to be looking to throw it out on the edge of the circle. It's going to be the quickest way to hit targets that are farther away from you. The last thing you would want to do is throw out a E like this, where his hand is really wasting a lot of its time in an area where it is not hitting any of the enemy targets. So again, you really want to take full advantage of the kind of range extension that the E provides and really get them in a good position. If you want to really ensure a hit, you want for the enemy to be right inside of your circle, and it will provide them with a very minimal amount of dodge time compared to something that's a little bit farther away in the circle. It really does take a little bit of time for the full E line to get out, so you want to get it as close as possible to the target when you are playing Viktor. Now, I do recommend, if you haven't played much Viktor, to go in the practice tool and just really get used to how the E works and just throw out a bunch of different E's in different situations. That will wrap up my final tip for Viktor. Again, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to help you out in the comments down below. And as well, if you want to add your own tips, I'd love to see some of those. And I'm going to put a link to my Twitch and Discord if you want to get in contact with me directly. As always, guys, take it easy.